Ziggity Zig back with some Class Act, and because the release date for Gnomes vs. Goblins was released, it'll be coming out this coming Monday, which is consequently, or not consequently, but coincidentally coming out on the same night as I have just recently come up with my Monday night Hearthstone stream. So, if Monday night you want to see me unlock some Gnomes vs. Goblins decks, hopefully, if all goes well and the whole thing doesn't crash, then you can do that Monday night, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I think we're back on at twitch.tv/ziggityzig. Plug aside, so it's not out yet, but I didn't want to do something that's kind of not part of the month. So the month of December is going to be kind of a Gnomes vs. Goblins sort of thing, so we're just going to look at some previews for it. So I'm over here, PWN, Hearthpwn, Hearthone, whatever you want to call it, hearthone.com/guide/blah blah blah. The link down below. And we're just going to have a look at them really quick, because the other thing I'm going to link to is earlier on the day of recording this, I was watching Amaz, who if you go over to twitch.tv/AmazHD, AMAZHD, he does a really awesome Hearthstone stream, which you can check out, and he did a really in-depth look at them, so hopefully by the time this is out, he'll have released those over to YouTube, and I will link to those as well. So for in-depth, go over and check him out. He talked for like an hour on a lot of these different cards. So I'm just going to go over them kind of basically. But the main deal, these are, I'm starting with the low cost ones. So this is an entire expansion. So this is, I think, over 120 or is that 140 cards? There's a lot of cards all coming out. Not quite the same way as Naxxramas, because Naxxramas was once you defeat an enemy, then you automatically get 2 copies of a card. This is going to go the same way as the expert cards, where you can get any number of random things in any deck. So you just buy decks and you can get stuff. But this is what we're looking at. So there's a 0 drop. There's only one 0 drop in the. These are all the neutral cards. I'll get to the class cards of an O2 taunt. But this is a mech. So the mech is the new type. If you can't see this, then you can check out this page on your own and look through these at your own pace. So there's a lot of there's some taunt and some interesting death rattles. But for the most part, mech seems to be the big thing. So like on this one page alone, there's a human, there's a Murloc, because Shaman's into that, but mech seems to be the big thing. So there's a lot of things that happens, which is, say this one over here, Cogmaster, has +2 attack while you have a mech. So a lot of them are buffs based on the mechs themselves. So if you can imagine this is a turn 1, throw down the Cogmaster, and he has 2 attack while you have a mech, and then you throw out a 0 mana target dummy, which is a mech, and then all of a sudden you've got an O2 taunt and a 3/2 hiding behind that on turn 1. So there seems to be a lot of power coming out in Gnomes vs. Goblins, just a lot of buffs and immediate power, so I'm wondering if Silence is going to play a much larger role. The other one in between here is the 1 mana cost Clockwork Gnome, which the death rattle is add a spare part to your hand. So below here, I'll move down here, and here are what they have is tokens. So these are what a spare part is. It can be an emergency coolant, which is a 1 mana and it freezes a minion, 1 mana give a friendly minion stealth, 1 mana swap a minion's attack and health, give a minion taunt, return a friendly minion to your hand. So each of these are 1 mana only, and there's this additional Boombot, that you only get that on one particular card. When you throw down a legendary, you get these extra Boombots. So these ones right here, except for that, are the spare parts. So give a minion 1 health, give a minion 1 attack. So these are all just kind of basic, small buffs. But there's a number of cards that work the synergy of adding a spare part. So this one has a death rattle of adding a spare part. Your mechs, this mech is your mechs cost 1 less. So on turn 2, you put down a mech warper. Then on turn 3, you can throw down a 4-cost mech, or 3 2-cost mechs. You just keep tossing them all down. The Micro Machine at the start of each turn gain +1 attack, so that's a lot like the Necrolord, or no, not the Necrolord, the Shade of Naxxramas, which gains attack and damage each turn. There's a Murloc, just a basic Murloc, Puddle Stomper, Recombobulator. The battle cry is transform a minion into a random minion with the same cost. There's also a lot of random events in here. So the Goblins versus Gnomes, Goblins are all about the inventions, which sometimes don't always work. So there's a little bit of 50-50 going on in here, which is really hilarious. So this next set of 8, really quickly, a lot of 2 drops. So, like I say, if you get that one that makes your mechs all cost less, here's some mechs in here. The Annoyatron, which has Taunt and Divine Shield, a 1/2 with Taunt and Divine Shield. Huge. You're going to see a lot of that one. The Goblin Stalker, 2/3 stealth. It's probably pretty good. Because a lot of, early stealth, not many people can get rid of it unless you have like a big, powerful arcane explosion or something like that. Whenever your opponent casts a spell, this gains 1 attack. So it's kind of the opposite of the Mana Worm. Ship's Cannon, whenever you summon a pirate, deal 2 damage to a random enemy. So this a weird addition to pirates and murlocs. There's a couple of little pirates and murloc cards in here. Explosive Sheep, the Death Rattle. This is a 1/1 where the Death Rattle is 2 damage to all minions. This is a 2-mana non-taunting abomination, kind of. Battlecry, if you have a mech, gain 1/1 and add a spare part to your hand. I'm assuming that both of these are dependent on if you have a mech. So if you have a mech on the field, you toss this down, he becomes a 4/4, and you get a spare part. This is the interesting one of the other random events here, the Ogre Brute here, which has a 50% chance of attacking the wrong enemy, which I kind of enjoy that. I'm not quite sure what's happening there. Amaz goes into it a little bit, and he was asking a question, but I didn't tune in for this part. What if your Ogre Brute, you're 4/4, what if he goes to punch, say, a taunt? You have a 50-50 chance of not hitting the taunt, so the taunt is actually moot, so our taunt's not quite as viable on things where they have this. I think there's 2 characters, the Ogre Brute and another card, so there's a possibility of, what, like 4 different dudes you can have, which will just ignore taunt, which seems interesting. The Goblin Sapper has 4 attack, while your opponent has 6 or more cards in hand. Curious. Just a lot of synergy with a number of different things. Cards in hand, mechs. Battlecry on the Gnomish Experimenter. Here's another random event. If the card you draw is a minion, it automatically transforms it into a chicken. That's a little too temperamental for my liking, because what if you get your, like, Ragnaros out? Boom, you got a 1/1 chicken. If you control a secret, the Illuminator, at the end of your turn, you restore 4 health to your hero. So if you hide this behind a taunt and have a secret up, you can just keep getting all your health back. This one is a taunt, which gains 1/1 for each enemy Death Rattle. So he gains for all the Death Rattle that's on your opponent. Opponent's side. So for 3 cost, if he's tossing out like an Undertaker and a bunch of web spinners, then that's huge. Because all of a sudden you got like a 6/7 taunt on turn 3. Hobgoblin, playing whenever you play a 1 attack minion, this Hobgoblin gets buffed. So really, it's really mathing a lot up. So your Micro Machine is a 1 taunt, your Annoyatron is a 1 taunt, one attack, the Explosive Sheep, same thing. So a lot of synergy with kind of each other, and with a lot of already in existence cards. So these are all going to work in conjunction with what's already there. The Gnomes Infantry is a charge taunt for a 1/4. Wind Fury on a 1/4, Spider Tank is just actually these 2 are mechs, but the Gnomes Infantry is not so much. The Enhance-O-Matic, Battlecry gives your other minions either Wind Fury, Taunt, or Divine Shield at random. So just Wind Fury on you, Taunt on you, and Divine Shield on the 4th one. So this is kind of cool if you have, I think Amaz was talking about having Zoo decks, that's a huge thing. Jeeves, at the end of each player's turn, the player draws until they have 3 cards. Now, I was thinking about this one, and the cool thing about this one is if you are kind of low on cards, but your opponent has lots, because each player draws until they have 3. So if you play this as your last card, you will get 3. If your opponent already has 4 cards, then boom, you get super value out of that because they don't gain any additional cards. I like that one. It's kind of specific to one particular time and place. Piloted Shredder is another mech. The Death Rattle summons a random 2-cost minion. So a lot of these 2-cost ones down here, and of course all the ones from the current game as well. Wait, I'm looking at the wrong one. Burly Rockjaw Trog. Whenever your opponent casts a spell, gain +2 attacks. This is sort of the same as the one before, where it's based on your opponent casting spells as opposed to you. So the randomness here is sometimes it's, oh, it randomly does this, but other times it's dependent on something that your opponent does or has. So there's levels of the randomness in these cards. I'm really kind of enjoying it. It should be a whole lot of fun, but also, speaking as a person who is the unluckiest person in the world in Hearthstone, I always seem to get a terrible draw going up against someone who gets the perfect draw. Cough, that guy, Griff, cough. I'm frightened of the random element and how much randomness is going to play into this, because this is why I don't run a Mad Bomber. I think I did once. Arcane Nullifier is a mech with Taunt, and it can't be targeted by spells or hero powers, which is kind of cool, so that's as though it's slightly stronger, but a more health, less attack, Fairy Dragon, because it can't be targeted by spells or powers, so that can't get Starfire. Of course, it is a 4-cost. There's a lot of 4 and 5 cost in here, and a number of 7 costs as well. Because on Mystic, the battle cry is take control of an enemy secret. So you can steal the Hunter's Freezing Trap, which I think is ridiculously overpowered, but there you go, and it's a 4-3, so it's kind of the same as the, oh, what's the guy, the Silence guy that I always do, the 4-3. Anyway, Mechanical Yeti, Death Rattle, give each player a spare part. So that tosses out those tokens that we were looking at down below, like the I almost said the Rusty Trombone. That's not a spare part. But it gives each player one of those. The spare parts, I was having a look through the spare part synergizing cards, and almost all of them are in the neutral cards, so these are ones that anybody can have. Mini Mage is a stealth spell damage 1, which is really curious, so it's a stealth plus spell damage, which is kind of cool, and it's a 4-1 though, so it can't get taken out by like a Whirlwind or an Arcane Explosion. The Lost Tall Strider is just a basic beast, 5-4, which it's kind of cool because there's not too many beasts at that level. 4 cost is sort of the opposite health and damage as a Yeti. Bomb Lobber deals 4 damage to a random enemy minion. So unlike a couple of the ones that deal 1 damage to number, it's 4 damage all to 1. So 5 mana for a 3-3 is meh. There's a pirate, a basic pirate is 7-4, the Salty Dog. The cool thing about this, what Amaz was able to do, I don't know how he did it, I was asking him about this and he didn't answer, was he actually got a lot of the sound files. So if you go over to Amaz's YouTube video, which I hope is up, and I hope I can actually reference, he has a lot of the sound files, so he says, oh, this one's got a really great sound file, and Salty Dog, I forget, I think his is, let's get salty, or something like that. It was really hilarious to hear a bunch of them ahead of time, because we're not getting until Monday. The Anti-Heal Bot restores 8 health to your hero on Battlecry, that's a large amount, but it's still only a 3-3 mech, but it's a 5 cost, so it's actually slightly less than the Guardian of Kings, but, and it's a little less healthy, but a little less beefy, but it does give you 8 health back. The Fell Reaver. This one I'm a little weirded out by. It's an 8-8, and whenever your opponent plays a card, you discard the top 3 of your deck. So if you play this, I mean, you're obviously up on turn 5, up on 5 mana or 6 mana, your opponent can play like 3 cards. You obviously don't want to play this against Miracle Rogue, but if they play 3 cards, that's 9 cards off your deck is gone. You will get oh, what's the word? Oh, man. When all your cards are out and you're... I can't think of it. It's milled. Holy God, I was like, mirrored? Mill something? No. Mimiron's Head is a cool one. This is the first legendary that we come across here at 5. At the start of your turn, if you have at least 3 mechs, so any of these mechs, I mean, there's a lot of mechs down here, you destroy those mechs and form VO7-tron. Which Voltron down here. Now, if there's any mechs here with a Death Rattle, that's kind of cool. So summon a random 2-cost minion. So you have a bunch of those, and then you get Voltron. Charge. So it automatically can attack. Mega Wind Fury can attack 4 times a turn. So 4 4s, 16 damage. And if you combine that with any kind of Death Rattle, this is going to do. So this Mimiron's Head, super crazy OP. The Junk Bot, whenever a friendly mech dies, this gains 2-2, so that synergizes with, again, the mechs doing things. Hemet Nessingwary, Battlecry destroys a beast, so that's cool going up against large beast decks, like, say, either, I mean, it's only useful against Druid or Hunter. Or if anyone ever, again, will run a Core Hound, but those are pretty much going to go out of style. Matter Bomber. Going back to the Mad Bomber, dealing 3 damage randomly split between all other characters. This one, 5 mana, a 5-4, so higher end than the Mad Bomber, but it deals 6 damage randomly split. Well, another legendary is the Blingtron 3000. The Battlecry equips a random weapon for each player. It is expected that this will happen in every class, will be in most decks for classes that do not automatically get weapons. And then you can just, and the other thing was, this will destroy the weapon they've currently got. So if you're playing a Shaman, he's got a Doom Hammer, boom, you toss this out and he's just got a Fiery War Axe, which can be argued is better or worse, I don't know. Mogor the Ogre is the next legendary. All minions have a 50% chance, all minions have a 50% chance to attack the wrong enemy. So if you're going up against a taunt wall, that could be huge. Toshli is the next legendary, a 5-7. Battlecry and Death Rattle gives you spare parts. So again, we're hitting up the tokens and spare parts, which are kind of random and fun. So you can't put those spare part cards or the Voltron into your deck. I'm not sure if that came out as obvious or not. Piloted Sky Golem is just a legendary. It's not a... no, it's an elite. It's not a legendary card. The Death Rattle is summon a random 4-cost minion. So it's kind of these summoning the randomness again. Gazlowe is whenever you cast a 1-mana spell, add a random mech to your hand. Maybe not even one from your own deck. That's what's curious about that one. So the 1 mana spell, and there are a number of them, and then in certain classes they were going over is that there are ways that that could be even bigger, because there are certain classes that have a lot of 1 mana spells. So if you toss Gazlowe out on turn 6, or even on turn 8, you've still got two more, and you can add some random mechs, which could be awesome and could be whatever. Or it could just be not all that helpful at all. So a lot of these are kind of, there's a few Hail Marys in here, I find. Dr. Boom, Battlecry summons the 2 Boom Bots. The Boom Bots that we saw down below in the tokens. Warning, of course, the bombs may explode. Meh. Trogzor the Earthinator. 7 cost for a 6/6. Whenever your opponent casts a spell, you summon a burly Rockjaw Trog, which is a 3/5. So whenever they cast a spell, you get another 3/5, which then says whenever your opponent casts a spell, gain +2 attack. So it just gets totally out of control. Foe Reaper 4000 is a mech, damages the minions next to whomever he attacks. So it's more like a Cone of Cold minion. Or a Cone of Cold minion, which is crazy sauce. Force Tank Max is not... It's a common? What? A 7/7. Oh, okay, a 7/7 for 8, but it's got Divine Shield. So a high-end Divine Shield. Pretty interesting. This ends the neutral cards, and we get up in the class ones. Sneed's Old Shredder, Death Rattle, summon a random legendary minion. Random legendary. Probably because they're adding so many. Look at all these legendaries that they're adding. So it may not be that you're just going to get automatic Deathwing or automatic Ysera or something like that. You're probably going to end up with, I don't know, Gazlowe or Dr. Boom. But it is kind of interesting on as a death rattle for 5/7. Mechgineer Thermoplug. I'm getting all my WoW references in here properly. Whenever a minion dies, summon a Leper Gnome. Or an enemy minion dies, you summon a Leper Gnome. I think, unless he's... No, it shouldn't summon it for them. So you pop that down and then clear his board with, like a Flame Strike or whatever on the next turn, obviously, because 9 and 7 is way higher than 10. Then you just get a whole bunch of Leper Gnomes. And then you run them into things. Clockwork Giant costs 1 less for each card in your opponent's hand. So again, it's not so much a randomness, but you're kind of planning things out. And if your opponent you're going up against a handlock, then boom, you can toss this down. But again, it's sort of just an 8/8 goes up against the handlock's Mountain Giants, right? If a Mountain Giant is correct. So these are the neutral ones. Each class can do that. Here are your actual class cards. Warrior. So what we're looking at in Warriors is a bunch of Battlecry. It involves some armor. So this one is Warbot. You enrage it and gain +1 attack. And that's only 1 mana though for a 1/3 that you can enrage. Here's a weapon. The Ogre War Maul is 50% chance to attack the wrong enemy with a 4 attack, and it's got 2 swipes on it. This one, Bouncing Blade, 3 damage. Deal 1 damage to a random minion. Repeat until a minion dies. So if you toss this out and he's got like a Ragnaros and you're sitting there on Ysera, it's just going to bounce back and forth and back and forth. And it's just going to hit all the minions until something dies. So if there's a lot of really heavy stuff on the board, you will not only kill one of them, you will weaken most of them. So this is huge right now for Warrior. Screwjank Clunker, which is a very odd thing to say. The Battlecry gives a friendly mech 2/2. Alright, and it's a 2/5 on its own. Siege Engine, whenever you gain armor, give this minion +1 attack. That's okay, so if you combine that with a few of the other Warrior cards, that's pretty huge. The Iron Juggernaut Legendary is Shuffle a Mine into your opponent's deck. When drawn, it explodes for 10 damage. So you give your opponent a card where randomly, somewhere in their deck, it will come up, and it will do 10 damage to them. I don't know. I think that's just a whole lot of fun. So you never know when that's going to happen. Shield Maiden just gains, Battlecries gain 5 armor. So if you do that on top of the Siege Engine, just all these things of gaining armor, and honestly, your hero power will buff this with 1 attack each time, and it's already a 5/5. So per turn, you're probably going to give it one more attack. Crush for 7 mana. Destroy a minion. If you have a damaged minion, this costs 4 less. So this is a 3 mana destroy minion if you have anyone who's injured. Big. Not really a theme going on there. Warlock wise, there's a couple of demons actually added to the Warlock one. Let's see if I can get these all lined up. Mistress of Pain, whenever this minion deals damage, restore that much health to your hero. So, it is just a 1, but you do have a lot of buffs on your, in your Warlock deck. You can buff up your demons, and then of course you're looking up here at Mal'Ganis, the legendary, for the Warlock. Your other demons have +2/2, and your hero is immune. A 9/7 for 9. That's pretty sizable. Dark Bomb, deal 3 damage for 2 mana. Implosion, deal 2/4 damage to a minion, summon a 1/1 imp for each damage dealt. That's kind of weird. Amaz had a really cool idea for that one, but I'll let you go through that because I think he went through the Warlock. And the Warlock is the one that I heard him talking about the most, but that's a rare card. Fell Cannon, at the end of your turn, deal 2 damage to a non-mech minion. So this is kind of like a mini Ragnaros. So at the end of your turn, he just deals 2 damage to something that is not a mech. So you want to have mechs on your side because notice it doesn't say to an enemy minion, so this will kill your dudes as well. This will kill your demons, probably. If you have a stealthed Blood Imp, dead. Floating Watchers, one of my favorite character models in Warcraft, World of Warcraft specifically. I love this one. Whenever your hero takes damage on your turn, this gains 2/2. So it just beefs itself up. So this punishes beatdown decks that just kind of ignore your minions. Demon Heart, deal 5 damage to a minion, and if it's a friendly demon, give it 5/5 instead. That on top of the Mistress of Pain, bam, and then all of a sudden you're doing 6 damage, so you're putting 6 health back into your guy every time. None of these are going to work out perfectly because everyone's going to be rocking so much silence, but anyway, that's besides the point. Anima Golem, at the end of each turn, destroy this minion if it's your only one. So it's kind of a gamble. 6 cost for a 9/9, so it's a big beast to be out there, but if he's all by himself, it's dead. And we already went over Mount Gainus. So we'll go up here and look at the Shaman cards, where you get a new totem. It's a Vitality totem. At the end of your turn, you restore 4 health to your hero, so it's like one of those neutral ones down the bottom that does that at the end of every turn. The Wind Fury mech, the Whirling Zap-O-Matic, a 3/2 for 2. Crackle, deals 3 to 6 damage, and an Overload, so there's a bit more Overload going on in here. So it's just kind of a slightly larger lightning bolt? Yeah, mostly. And it's just pretending to do it to a goblin because that's the theme. Power Mace weapon, Death Rattle, gives a friendly mech 2/2. And there's no overload to that one, which is kind of interesting. So it's a 3 damage to 2-turn weapon there, and on its Death Rattle, it actually buffs up your mechs. Ancestor's Call, put a random minion from each player's hand into the battlefield. That's a gamble, because if you obviously want to do that if you have some huge things that you can't quite put out yet, but again, your opponent could have a Ysera or a Malagos in their hand as well that you can't deal with. Do this only if you have a Hex to back it up. Dunmal Shaman, Wind Fury, and Overload 1, and he has Wind Fury, but a 50% chance to attack the wrong enemy, so that's crazy. That's like 5-10 damage that could go anywhere. Or, 50% chance of going anywhere. Siltvin Spirit Walker. This is the only class-specific Murloc, if I am not mistaken. I could be mistaken. Whenever another friendly Murloc dies, draw a card. So that synergizes well with Murloc decks. So maybe there's going to be some Shaman Murloc decks that people are going to try out. Meh, don't know. Neptulon is the legendary for Shaman Battlecry. Adds 4 random Murlocs to your hand with an overload of 3. These are Murloc overload cards, which... So it's going to be an Overload, Murloc, Shaman. I don't know what they were trying to go for there, but it's fun. It's fun. Why not be fun? Rogue cards. Goblin Auto Barber. Battlecry gives your weapon +1 attack. Pretty cool. So 3/2 for 2 as well. So early game, that's pretty awesome. And it gives your little 1/2 dagger into a 2/2 dagger. So that's pretty sweet. And so the Pirate. Whenever you summon a Pirate, gains Stealth. That's okay, so you can attack, and then after the attack you can summon a Pirate, and then it stealths it again for the next turn, because with a 4/1 you want to have stealth, unless of course you're going up against something like Wind Fury, or a Arcane Explosion, or even a Explosive Trap, probably. Rogues get a new weapon as well. The Cogmaster's Wrench has +2 attack while you have a mech, so this is already a 3/3 for 3, as long as you have a mech down, and even with this particular mech, then it's a 4/3 for 3. Savings. Cost savings. At the end of your turn, the Iron Sensei gives another friendly mech +2/+2. Big. You throw that down at the end of a turn, especially if something is a little bit hurting, then that's pretty sizable. Sabotage destroys a random enemy minion. With the combo, if you hit this on a combo, then it also destroys your opponent's weapon. That is a big card. That's going to be an awesome card in Rogue decks. Because if you're going up against someone who doesn't have a weapon, it's already a cheap assassinate, because assassinate is 5, if I'm not mistaken, 5 mana currently. The next one, Tinker's Sharp Sword Oil. Oh, I thought it said Sharp Soil Off. You probably can't read that at all because it's so small. Give your weapon +3 attack. Combo gives a random friendly minion +3 attack. So again, these combo cards are buffing your weapon and your minion, or destroy a minion and destroy a weapon at the same time. The Ogre Ninja is a 6/6 stealth for 5, and this has, yet again, a 50% chance to attack the wrong enemy. I love how they're doing the 50% attacks with the ogres, because, as we all know, the two-headed ogres are always arguing amongst each other, so if you tell it what to do, and I love the concept of them fighting about who they're going to hit, and then the 50% chance actually hits that. The legendary for Rogue is Trade Prince Gallywix. Whenever your opponent casts a spell, gain a copy of it and give them a coin. Now the coin card, the coin card is a +1 mana for 0 mana cost, so that's kind of interesting, but this is essentially the Lore Walker Cho, but just a whole lot stronger because of 5/8. But if they just keep casting a spell, and they have a bunch of 1 mana spells, they can cast them over and over again, so you are essentially turning someone into a miracle rogue with that alone. So next we have the Priest. I wasn't sure I was going to go through this. I'm just trying to go through as fast as possible. So if you want to just click over and watch Amaz, then that's fine. The Light Bomb, 6 mana to deal damage to each minion equal to its own attack. That's handy for minions like this that have more attack than health, but for the other way around, it's not really going to work out too much. So that's kind of situational. The Shadow Bomber has a battle cry of dealing 3 damage to each hero. Seems kind of bullshit. I don't really know about that. The Light of the Naru restores 3 health. If the target is still damaged, you summon a Light Warden. So if something is down by 4 health, and this doesn't heal it up to full, it automatically summons a Light Warden. That's a pretty hot card for 1 mana. Shrink Master gives a minion -2 attack this turn. Why would you want to do that? Because if you give an enemy minion -2 attack, you can attack it, and it will do less damage to your minion or to yourself. But on your opponent's turn, it'll still go back up. What I find this synergizes with is something like a Shadow Word Pain. So you can take, if he drops a 4-drop, and he's like, oh, you can't Shadow Word Pain me, you drop down your Shrinkmeister, and boom, Shadow Word Pain, and he's dead. Because you can drop his attack low, and then the Shadow Word Pain becomes effective. Shadow Boxer, 2 mana for 2/3 for 2 mana mech. Whenever a character is healed, deal 1 damage to a random enemy. So that, in conjunction with, say, Circle of Healing on all your dudes, so a lot of things. And if you have the Cleric down, then you can do all sorts of cool stuff. So the synergy, just the number of spells that are going to be flying left and right, it's going to be amazing. Velen's Chosen is just a simple buff card, 3 mana, give a minion +2/+4, and spell damage +1, so it's just a huge buff. Vol'jin is the legendary priest. The battle cry is swap health with another minion, so a 6/2. So let's say you have a, what's the turtle? The 2/7 beast turtle. You drop that down, and then you pop Vol'jin down. For 5 mana, you've got a 6/7. Just right there. You got a pretty weak turtle, but whatever, you've got Vol'jin, he's awesome. 5 mana is the upgraded Repair Bot. Battlecry gives a friendly mech +4 health, so you target it at any one of your mechs, or your Shadow Boxer or whatnot, and it's a 5/5, so that's pretty sweet. Then, next we come up here towards the Paladin, and the Paladin has the Shielded Minibot, Divine Shield, 2/2 for 2. Seal of Light spell, restore 4 health to your hero and gain 2 attack this turn. So that is pretty awesome. It sort of buffs up your guy, and if you combine that with anything like a weapon on top of that, then you can have a 6 damage True Silver Champion, which is pretty hot. Scarlet Purifier, Battlecry deals 2 damage to all minions with Death Rattle. Curious. What if you drop this when you've got 2 Nerubian eggs out? Bam! Then you're sitting there. Turn 3, if you've coined out Nerubian Egg, turn 2 Nerubian Egg, turn 3 this guy, turn 3 you're sitting there with 3 minions with 4 damage. Huge. The Cog Hammer, yet another weapon here for the weapon classes, is a battle cry. Give a random friendly minion Divine Shield and Taunt. That's big, because that turns things into that, what's that cool 6 mana cost, awesome Divine Shield Taunt in the Paladin deck, I can't remember the name of it. 3 mana muster for battle, summon 3 1/1 Silver Hand recruits, equip a 1/4 weapons. That's just a buff, and it gives you 3 1/1s and your weapon. No really buffs or battle cries for that one, but it's kind of a battle cry in its own. Whenever you summon a mech, gain Divine Shields. This Cobalt Guardian does. Interesting synergy with that one. So it's you kind of hit this up against something because it's a 6/3. It doesn't take damage. You pop down another mech, and then on the next turn you can do the exact same thing. So if you pop a buff, if you pop Divine Shield and Taunt even on that one, then that really starts to work. Quartermaster, give your Silver Hand recruits +2. So Quartermaster on top of muster for battle. hits. And then you've got a bunch of 3/3s, and your 2/5 sitting there at the same time. Bolvar 4 Dragon is the legendary for the Paladin, and whenever a friendly minion dies, while this is in your hand, gain +1 attack. Not on the board. It is when it's in your hand. So you're just sitting there in your hand, and this is slowly buffing up. So if they don't, your opponent doesn't know what's in your hand, obviously, so you're just sitting there letting your dudes die, and you're just trying to get you board control, so by the time you get to turn 5, if you get Bolvar on turn 5, chances are he's going to be like an 8/7 by this point, so that's value right there, I find. The mage cards. Flame Cannon. For 2 mana, deal 4 damage to an enemy random minion, so that's just sort of like, it's kind of like a cheap, yeah. Oh, to a random enemy minion. There you go. So it's not quite a fireball because it's not directed. Unstable Portal adds a random minion to your hand and it costs 3 less. That's pretty cool. Because you could have any minions, and you could have like a 4 cost one for 1 mana, obviously. Snow Chugger. Freeze any minion damaged by this minion. So it's a very small frost elemental, I think. Freeze elemental? Ice elemental? Anyway. Soot Spewer. Again, these are both mechs here. Spell damage +1. It's a 3/3 with spell damage. Not too many spell damages going on, except there was one a little ways back. But in the mage, obviously you want to be casting your spells because you get your flame cannon, because that 4 damage to a random enemy minion. I mean, if you've got enough spell damage on there and they've only got one big giant beefy guy, this flame cannon can be quite big for only 2 mana. Goblin Blast Mage is the battle cry. If you have a mech, it deals 4 damage randomly split among all enemies. So sort of like an arcane missiles. And again, that synergizes with the spell damage. The Wee Spell Stopper for 4 mana. Adjacent minions can't be targeted by spells or hero powers. Interesting. And that's ongoing. That's not just a battle cry. So anyone sitting next to the Wee Spell Stopper cannot be targeted by spells or hero powers. So you want to put like your 1 health next to it if you're going up against a mage, things like that. But they can still be chopped at by dudes with weapons. I forget how that one works. Targeted by spells or hero powers. Is a weapon a hero power? Anyway. Echo of Medivh for 4 mana. Put a copy of each friendly minion into your hand. Oh, so it copies everything that's on the board and puts it in your hand. Huh. That's exciting, because if you have a couple of kind of cool battle cries out there, you can like double them up. So that's almost like a thought steal of yourself. And the legendary is the Flame Leviathan for the mage. When you draw this, deal 2 damage to all characters. When you draw it. That's interesting, because your opponent will know that you've got that in your hand, and it is a 7/7 mech. I'm not sure where that will really get out there, but that randomly comes up in your hand, and so you got to be looking at your minions and just making sure that you don't have any dudes with 2 health on there, because that could come up on turn 2. Okay. Or you just... Oh, I suppose maybe if you allow that to be your first card and you don't mulligan it. Maybe that counts. So the Hunter. Call Pet. For 2 mana. Draw a card. If it's a beast, it costs 4 less. That's pretty big, because you got some high-end beasts... that you want to cost a whole lot less, like the Savannah Highmane is that for 2 mana, big. Steamweedle Sniper is a 2/3. Your hero power can target minions, so your little Hunter's Arrow, your steady shot that you've got, you can now attack minions with that. So having him active is pretty sweet. Feign Death. I love Feign Death in WoW, and so this I thought was pretty funny. Trigger all death rattles on your minions. This also synergizes really well with things like the Nerubian Egg, or... what am I trying to think of? There's a number of other ones. Not so much with a Sludge Belcher, so again, this is timely, and you gotta make sure you know what you're doing. The weapon for the Hunter is the Glaive Zuka, which is a funny one. But the battle cries give a random friendly minion +1 attack. It's a 2/2 for 2, so it's kind of... It's low end, but I don't know why the Hunter needs another weapon, but whatever. Metal Tooth Leaper. Battle cry, give your other mechs, all your other mechs, +2 attack. So you put this down as your last mech in the charge, and it will buff up all your other mechs. Cobra Shot for 5. Deal 3 damage to a minion and the enemy hero, so it does damage to both, so that's pretty huge. King of Beasts is a 5, and a taunt, and a battle cry. Gain 1 attack for each other beast you have. So it becomes a taunt, and then it buffs up for all the beasts that you have on the board. I assume on the board and not just in your hand. That would be ridiculous. Gazrilla is the legendary. It's a 7 cost 6/9, and whenever this minion takes damage, you double its attack. This will get silenced as fast as possible. If you do not have a silence, you are screwed. because you can just pop things. I mean, with 9 damage, you can pop this against anything, and you will probably knock out 2 or 3 minions. If you can knock out 2 or 3 minions before you get silence, this can be up to like a 24, 48 damage. It doubles its attack each time. 6, 12, 24, 48. That's big. The Druid, which I think is our last one. So we're coming to the end of this. Holy crap! How long have I been talking? The anodized Romo Cup is the only. Oh no, there's 2 mechs. So there's the mech which is taunt, and you can choose one, either +1 attack or +1 health. So it's either a 2/3 taunt or a 3/2 taunt. So depending on what's going on the board, I like that because with the Druid, it's always about giving options. So Druid, I think, is still pretty OP and still going to do quite well because the randomness isn't quite so much involved in the Druid. So you can again choose one with the Grove Tender, 3 mana for 2/4. Give each player a mana crystal, or each player draws a card. So there's an equality there, but you are in control of what's going on. Druid of the Fang, Battlecry. If you have a beast, transform this minion into a 7/7. So if you've already got a beast on the deck, on the board. Now remember, because the Druid of the Fang, the 2 Druid forms, they are now considered beast cards, or they weren't before. So that's pretty huge, the Druid of the Fang. Or wait, did I say? Yeah, it's the other Druid ones. Druid of the Claw, I think? Whatever. Mech Bearcat, 6 mana cost, 7/6. Whenever this minion takes damage, you add a spare part card to your hand. This is the only class card that involves picking up a spare part. So the spare parts are pretty huge there, where, I mean, they're not always the best buffs. It is a random element, but you are gaining more 1 cost, I believe. They were all 1 cost, were they not? Yeah, they were all 1 cost. Okay, where's my Druid? Oh, that was some fun scrolling. Did y'all pay attention? Dark Whisper, 6 mana for this spell. Choose one. Again, choosing. Summon 5 Wisps. Now, Wisps are 1/1. Or give a minion +5/+5 in taunt. Minion, not a mech, not a beast, anybody. So you can toss that on anybody at all and taunt. So that's pretty huge right there. The 5 Wisps, not sure how often that's going to come up, because Wisps aren't considered anything, so you have no buffs for them. Unless you have your Stormwind Champion out with a +1/+1 buff. Recycle, 6 mana spell, shuffle an enemy minion into your opponent's deck. So I think a minion that's on the board for your enemy, you just take them off the board and toss them back into the deck somewhere. So they have to redraw the card. It's like a sap, but +1. Just an additional synergy with that. Malorn is the legendary Death Rattle, is shuffle this minion into your deck. So if your Malorn dies, you get him back in your deck and you can draw him again. That's pretty cool. Could come in handy if you're getting milled, especially. Just keep putting him out there and hoping that he dies. Tree of Life is the 9 mana spell. Restore all characters to full health. Whoa. For 9 mana, so you can be down on 2. So if you're losing 30 health to 2, this restores everything? That's... Oh. That could be huge, but it also could be dangerous. I want to see how far I've been talking. I've been talking for far too long. I was going to include a game. I had kind of a... It wasn't really a funny game. It was a funny little clip bit where I laughed. But I won't bother doing that. So here's that. Those are 100% of the cards. I will leave the link to it down below so you can go through them in further detail and think about how these will synergize. I didn't even talk about the rest of it. Amaz went on for a very long time, and I want to link to that. So if you're really curious about all the rest of these cards, go and check it out. I will see you next week where I'll have the first of the GVGs. And if you come out on Monday night, 8 p.m. Eastern Time over twitch.tv/ZiggityZig, I'll be streaming starting then for a couple of hours. And we'll be looking at some GVG. So leave me a comment down below, send me an email, ziggityzig@gmail.com. You can follow me on Twitter at ZiggityZig. I can't believe I have talked consistently for like 38 minutes. This is huge. Stay tuned.